Hello and welcome to Superpower Broadcasting. I'm Kevin Castley. Thank you for being here tonight. Tonight we are going to be talking about the 75th anniversary of the atomic bombing on Hiroshima. And I mean, obviously, people who watch this channel are more or less familiar with the details surrounding the actual events. What I wanted to talk about in this stream essentially were 2 points. The first is the logic around it. I've got video from the president at the time, Harry Truman, explaining, uh, why he did it, etc. And I also wanted to address the anti-American narrative that's out there right now and prevalent online, where we have the brainlet brigades trying to say that it was racist to retaliate against Japan. So, Imperial Japan, fascist Japan in 1945. So, before we begin, I do have a few prepared clips basically to go over. So the first is this is what you know. They're basically some famous photos from the attacks. A lot of people see the mushroom cloud from Nagasaki and associate that with Hiroshima. That was not actually the mushroom cloud over Hiroshima. This was what it looked like shortly after 8:15 a.m. on August 6, 1945. The Enola Gay dropped a uranium-based atomic bomb, and they note in some articles how it was untested. Yeah, the reason why it was untested was because it was so obvious to everybody that the design was going to work. They had tested the one that was used at Nagasaki at the Trinity test at Almagrado, but this was the gun type device essentially, and it was, by all accounts, it wasn't deemed worth wasting a round on by actually testing it, because it was obvious to all the physicists involved that it would work. It did work. It released about a little over 20 kilotons of explosive power, TNT equivalent, and it obviously achieved the needed effect, along with the one that was dropped on Nagasaki. The code name for the uranium device dropped on Hiroshima was Little Boy, because it was a small, very thin round, or bomb rather. And then, of course, the plutonium one on Nagasaki was very wide. And the thing with this, though, that I think a lot of people really don't seem to understand is that when we talk about how in Hiroshima, for example, upwards, if you include the lighter casualties from radiation and cancer, that about 140,000 people died as a result of the attacks. What gets lost in this is that a conventional air raid on a Japanese city such as Tokyo killed 500,000 people just in the firestorm. So now, of course, the nuclear blast also creates a firestorm, yes, but far more people died in the conventional bombings of Japan than in the two nuclear attacks. I mean, that is one thing that goes over a lot of people's heads. It's easy to look at, a very iconic sort of mushroom cloud and to say, oh, look at the evil Americans or whatever, without realizing, well, if they had just simply firebombed Hiroshima, it's arguable quite a few more people would have died. But that, of course, misses the other context of the situation, which is that it was either this or a conventional land invasion that would have resulted in millions dead, potentially hundreds of thousands of American soldiers, millions of Japanese soldiers and civilians would have died in that. And it would have been a brutal land war. And every man, woman, and child there was basically trained to use whatever they could to attack the Americans, commit suicide, but kill them in the process, that kind of stuff. It was not a good situation to be in. And I want to emphasize something here, which, I mean, it should be obvious, but of course, the brainlet brigades of Twitter and the internet who have been, crapping on America today over the 75th anniversary, what they miss is that when it comes down to it, why did the United States even have to do this in the first place? Who started the war? Oh, that's right. Hirohito started the war. Imperial Japan started the war. On December 7th, 1941, the Imperial Japanese Navy attacked the United States naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii and killed around 5,000 people. It was devastating. They were trying to hit the aircraft carrier fleet. Now, they were not able to take any aircraft carriers out, but they sunk several battleships. They caused an immense amount of damage. And it was a surprise attack. No declaration of war beforehand or anything, out of the blue. And so that is what started the war in the Pacific against the United States, at least, right? Obviously, Imperial Japan had been waging a vicious war against China for, by that point, almost 10 years. And it's easy to talk about World War II as essentially starting when Hitler invaded Poland, and that was the final straw for the Allies in Europe, and that thereafter World War II had commenced. But you can really kind of think of World War II as starting with the Japanese invasion of Manchuria. I mean, upwards of 20 million people died just in the war between Japan and China in World War II. And that really gets overlooked by a lot of people. We have Jay in the chat tonight. Welcome, Jay. This isn't going to be too long of a stream, but I did send Jay an invite if Jay, has the time, if he feels like coming in. You're welcome on the program, of course. So, getting back to what I was saying, though, this was not something that America was excited about. It wasn't something that America took pleasure in doing. It wasn't something that America asked for. It was something that was brought upon, the empire, because the empire invaded America, attacked America. That's what happens. And as I said, what you're looking at right now is very obvious. It's essentially, it's iconic. It's something that's easy to visualize, a mushroom cloud, and think of the horror and everything. Again, if they had just used conventional bombs and firebombed Hiroshima, well, all the buildings, or the vast majority of the buildings, were made of essentially paper and wood, just as Tokyo was. Hundreds of thousands of people would have died. 140,000 people die in this, if you include the radiation afterwards. Well, it avoided a land war. So not only did it kill fewer people than if they had straight up firebombed the entire city, which was an alternative, it also prevented a land invasion, which would have seen the deaths of millions of Japanese people, like at a minimum, right? So that gets lost on the brainlet brigades, of course. So I want to take a look at just a disgusting tweet that was put out. This was by Boston Review on Twitter earlier today. They write here, quote, "Racism at home and racism abroad are inextricably interlinked. The belief that people of color are expendable is what murdered 100,000 people in Hiroshima 75 years ago today, and what murdered George Floyd 3 months ago." Oh my God. This is supposed to be a short stream. There are, I'm just going to count it right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 errors in this. Huge errors that I want to go over. Just in this, just what I read to you. 6 glaring errors. We're going to go over them. Error 1, racism at home. Okay, how is this relevant? Also implying that, America is a racist country, but what? Imperial Japan wasn't racist? Because they invaded and raped China essentially. Oh, that wasn't racially motivated. It wasn't motivated by racial chauvinism, even though all the propaganda depicted the Chinese as subhuman and the Japanese as essentially like this master race. Likewise with the Koreans, etc. Japan in the 1930s and 40s was an extremely racist country. They invaded Asia. They basically invaded everywhere that existed around them, right? To try to conquer them. And racism abroad. Okay, give me what? Are you trying to argue that this was American racial chauvinism? Okay, so that's a huge error there. Are inextricably interlinked. Okay, well, actually, I guess there's there are 7 errors here because what the fuck does that even mean? No, what are you talking about here? I mean, if we're talking about Imperial Japan, yes, but we're talking about the United States. Jay is in the studio now. I will bring Jay on as soon as I wrap up the analysis of this absolute cringe tweet. And of course, the Brainlet Brigades liked it, retweeted it, etc. The next tweet we'll get to after got far more traction. This one proceeds. So we're already at 3 issues already. The belief that people of color are expendable. Okay, so that's the 4th one. Expendable? Excuse me. I just talked about how nuking Hiroshima saved potentially millions of Japanese lives. So if we were talking about people of color, in this case as being people in Japan, well, if you didn't nuke the 2 cities and make it psychologically clear to the emperor that you're done, son, surrender now or be absolutely wiped off the face of the earth. We have, the most powerful weapons. You have no idea how they even work. Because unlike Stalin, who actually did have spies in the United States, and he wasn't shocked at all when this happened because he knew exactly what was going on, and he was working on his own atomic program shortly after. Truman thought he would be surprised, but of course Stalin had spies at the Los Alamos facility and everything. The Japanese had no spies. They had no idea what hit them. Absolutely no idea whatsoever. It was like being smitten. It was like being smot from, what is the past tense of that? I'm not 100% sure, but it was like being smited by the gods, essentially. So the belief that people of color are expendable. Well, again, I just explained this reduced casualties, huge, like big time, is what murdered 100,000 people. Okay, well, the stats that I've seen on it, this would even help their case. It's upwards of 140,000 people, but okay, this looks like it was just put together in 2 seconds. And hashtag Hiroshima 75 years ago today. Okay, so they got the number right. They didn't write like 71 years ago. They got 75 years ago, right? And what murdered George Floyd? Okay, murdered. My friend Wyatt at the National Telegraph has a good analysis out on some recent footage that's actually just being leaked to the press, showing essentially body cam footage of what happened when George Floyd resisted arrest and everything, and he was clearly undergoing a drug-induced psychotic sort of episode where he was talking about how he couldn't breathe even though nobody was actually touching him and everything. It's a case that you can definitely make that excessive force, etc., maybe even manslaughter, but we're talking about murder. Yeah, no, I don't think anybody. How are you going to make a case in a court of law that Derek Chauvin specifically murdered because of course that has legal ramifications. That term, that's a loaded term. Murder George Floyd. That's going to have to be adjudicated in a court of law. He is not being convicted of murder yet. 3 months ago, it looks like it was accidental death as a result of excessive force. Right now, you can say criminal negligence, manslaughter, etc. They're not going for that. They're going for second-degree murder charges. Last I checked, yeah, that's getting dismissed after this footage is leaked. There's no way he's going to prison. He's going to be acquitted. So this is slanderous material already. I lost track of it. I think we're up to number 6 now. And then the 7th issue, just in this one stupid tweet that the Brainlet Brigades were hyping up. Look at the thumbnail here. I just showed you the mushroom cloud. That's the mushroom cloud that we have from the attack on Hiroshima. That was taken from the Enola Gay, the aircraft that dropped the bomb. Does an aircraft sit at sea level? Stationary? No, that's a different test. That is a picture of the Baker shot. I believe it was Eniwetok or Bikini Atoll, 7 years later, where they were testing. This killed nobody. This was a nuclear test to see the effect of a nuclear blast, a submarine nuclear blast on surrounding ships. It looks cool. You can check out the footage online. That's the Baker shot, bro. That is not Little Boy. So they got everything wrong. The Boston Review. What a bunch of brainlets. So anyway, that's my thoughts there. We're going to bring on Jay now. Welcome to the program, Jay. How's it going? Are you there? Yeah, it looks like Jay might be away right now. But when he comes back, we'll definitely we'll talk with Jay. Let's see. So, of course, I basically tweeted in response to that, right? I'm like, wait, so it was racist to retaliate against an empire that attacked the United States? How's that racist? That's like saying that if somebody who's a different race than you punches you in the face, but then you fight back, racist. Unbelievable. So we got another tweet. This one's out from Al Jazeera English. It says Hiroshima marks the 75th anniversary of the world's first atomic bombing that killed more than 140,000 people. The U.S. has never apologized for the bombings. Now, I think we got Jay here. I think I heard Jay. Are you there, Jay? It just been some background noise, but yeah. Oh, okay. So we lost Jay. So he must be having an internet connection of some issue. But if he tries rejoining the studio, we'll have him back on. But this tweet concludes by saying that the U.S. has never apologized for the bombing. So this is all true here. But look at that framing. Wait, why should the U.S. apologize for the bombings? Imperial Japan should apologize for Pearl Harbor. I mean, you don't get to start a war, and then when it doesn't go so well for you, now you say, no, you can't like nuke me and stuff. Like, we can bomb you out of the blue with no warning and everything and kill all your people and stuff, and intend to kill your aircraft carriers and wipe your Navy out of commission, etc. But now you have the upper hand. Now you're coming for us, uncle. It's like, yeah, that's not how war works. That's not how total war works. You don't get to tell the enemy that you attacked, now we're ready, now you can't do that. You can't do that. It's like, no. The only way that you can do that is if you offer complete and total unconditional surrender. Then you can say, don't nuke us. But they weren't going to. It took these 2 nukes to get them to that point. So the only way that you get to cry uncle like that is if you surrender unconditionally. That's it. They didn't. So the U.S. was forced to do this. So, but we do have Jay here. So hopefully your internet is working now. How's it going, Jay?
Can you hear me, Kevin?
I can now, yes.
Awesome. So my headphones are being absolutely terrible for some reason and won't let me use the microphone. So I had to I had to get my school laptop, Kevin.
Oh, your school computer.
Yeah, I had to get the school computer out.
Oh
But yeah,
man.
all sorted. We're back online. That tweet is fucking horrendous from the Boston Review, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like,
I'll bring it up. I
can
mean,
I, also, I think you're right. I feel like that's not even a nuclear. I feel like that's the hydrogen bomb tests that were.
no, no, it's
No?
not. No,
Oh,
it's
okay,
not. It's
okay.
a similar yield. No,
Ah,
actually, it's not even a similar yield. It's an 8 kiloton burst. Like, this is the thing. Like, who are these people trying to fool? I watch
mm,
nuclear test footage for, like, when I'm bored.
yeah,
Obviously, I can
yeah.
tell these apart. Like, once you've seen enough rolls of like 1950s nuke shots, you like
Mm.
know the names of them offhand. Like,
But
oh,
that's
that's Baker,
definitely,
that's Castle
yeah.
Bravo, etc. It's like that is not Hiroshima.
Oh,
Also,
yeah, we know that.
even if it was, like even if they were trying to pass it as it was, and you didn't know that it wasn't, you could deduce that it wasn't because we know for a fact that the only pictures that exist were taken from the plane that dropped it. What the
That's
fuck is the
right.
plane doing 5 feet above the ground in enemy territory? Like that is
Mm,
not the Hiroshima burst. This is the
uh,
Hiroshima burst.
That's yes. And the first image is clearly not anywhere near. It looks more like Bikini Atoll because look, there's an island, there's the
Yeah,
ships out at sea. That's definitely the test. One
it,
of the
it's
tests.
either Bikini or Enuitak. Like it's either
Mm,
of those two. In other words,
yeah,
like a quarter of the world away from Japan.
yeah, exactly.
8 years later. What about your
Yeah,
brainlet? See, like this is what I'm talking about, the brainlet brigades. Every single, not just sentence, every phrase in this paragraph is incorrect, with the exception of
it's fake
75
news.
years ago. That's the only thing they got right. Even the
Yeah,
stat that would help them, 140,000, they were wrong about. They write 100,000. What a bunch of fucking brainlets, man. So I was just amazed how you could cram that much cringe into such a short paragraph.
these are the same sort of people that will go out there and be like, Trump's promoting fake news, and it's like, yeah, so are you.
Yeah. And the thing is, this isn't just like some fake news, like that Veterans Today thing talking about how that blast in Beirut the other day was Israel nuking Lebanon.
Oh
Obvious
yeah.
fake news. This was not that. This is the Boston Review. I'm just looking at what they describe themselves as. They're an American quarterly political and literary magazine. They publish political, social, and historical analyses.
Mm-hmm.
And Boston Review also publishes an imprint of books with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology Press. So there were like
Hang
they,
on,
they
isn't
work
that
with
the?
MIT,
Yeah, I was
and
about to say, isn't that MIT?
they
Holy
got every
shit!
fucking phrase in this paragraph, with the exception of 75 years ago. Every other phrase in the paragraph, not just sentence, every phrase is inaccurate or slanderous or outright anti-American bullshit. So see, and I could bring up 1,000, 5,000 screenshots of absolute cringe from the last few days around the anniversary of the Hiroshima
Mm-hmm.
atomic bombing, of people trying to blame America, trying to
Mm-hmm.
excuse the emperor, etc. All this kind of crap, and 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 yet I think this one, it, it's the most bang for your buck because it's easy to dunk on individual members of the brainlet brigades on the internet. But
Yeah.
this is the Boston Review, and look at how unbelievably inaccurate this crap is. So it's no surprise then that average people are parroting Michael Moore tier filth, because when so-called prestige, I mean, we're talking MIT, not just any university, we're talking like high caliber.
MIT.
Yeah.
Even I, a Britishman, knows what MIT is. It's like considered as your America's highest learning
Yep.
center of learning. Like the ones we know of, us Brits, is MIT, Harvard, and one more.
Stanford.
Yes, thank you. Yes,
Stanford. Yeah.
Stanford. Yeah, all the rest we don't are just peasant places. But those are the three places you go to
Yeah.
and get a like degree.
Well, and you know,
Kevin.
them up in his little appeal to authority here. He says, I'm just going to bring it up. Who wins? The guy or the
What's going on? I keep losing Kevin. Hello? Okay. So it's not my end, it's Kevin's end.
Yo, can you hear me?
Yo, yeah. You're back now. You keep like weirdly cutting out, and it's not my end because I was just listening to the stream and I could hear myself.
Yeah,
So
it's got to
everything
be an
was-
internet thing of some sort. I'm not sure. It's like an intermittent connection. I don't think that's anything to do with my laptop. Actually, I think it's an internet issue. I am using like the best Ethernet cable. It's like Cat 6 and stuff, but you know, it did cut out, so that's annoying. Were you able to hear any of that stuff about the
No,
tweet? Okay.
no, not at all.
Okay. Well, I was basically just saying about that tweet there, how this guy, he needs his school computer and everything, and he brings up the whole Harvard and Stanford thing. Or me is like, oh, look at this, the big schools and stuff. And it turns out it's like, well, I mean, check this out. By the way, he still refuses to debate. Like he wanted to do a private off-air quote unquote friendly chat on Discord because he knows that I would absolutely humiliate him in public if we did do the debate. So
Yeah.
I'm only talking to him when we do the debate that we agreed to. So
No, I get you 100% on that. Why
Yeah.
waste your time
yeah.
in having an off-air chat?
But yeah, so that's those two tweets right there. I wanted to play. It's about a minute clip. This is actually Harry Truman's announcement of the bombings, and he brings up, the cost, the sort of justification, the rationale behind it. So this is President Harry Truman.
A short time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima and destroyed its usefulness to the enemy. That bomb has more power than 20,000 tons of TNT. The Japanese began the war from the air at Pearl Harbor. They have been repaid many-fold, and the end is not yet. With this bomb, we have now added a new and revolutionary increase in destruction to supplement the growing power of our armed forces. In their present form, these bombs are now in production, and even more powerful forms are in development, which the sun draws his power has been loosed against those who brought war to the Far East. We have spent more than $2 billion on the greatest scientific gamble in history, and we have won. But the greatest marvel is not the size of the enterprise, its secrecy, or its cost, but the achievement of scientific brains in making it work.
Yeah, so that's Harry S. Truman there going over how, they're the ones that brought war to the world. It was not the United States. The United States did not start World War II. It was Hitler and Hirohito. So
Sure was. These people that say that, nukes are, the standard talking points and whatnot, or like they say that we shouldn't have nuked Japan, we didn't need to because they were going to surrender. No, they weren't. They weren't at all. Like the American military would have had to have, it was already island hopping from like Midway and all the other islands in the Pacific, and they still had a long way to go. All the analysts at the time were saying, look, if we carry on, we're going to lose hundreds of thousands of American troops just to get on the mainland. And then when we're on the mainland, we're then going to have to deal with a population that is diehard to the emperor, because the Japanese military had made it for years and years and years. Loyalty to the empire, loyalty to the emperor, dying for the emperor is the most honorable thing in Japanese culture at the time. And, you know, all the analysts were concerned that it would end up becoming a hand-to-hand combat situation with hundreds of thousands of casualties, not just on American side, but on Japanese side as well. And the nuke basically just brought the war to end probably, what, a year, 2 years earlier?
At a minimum, I think that if the United States did an amphibious landing on Honshu, you would have seen mothers and children throwing improvised grenades and sticks and things charging at American soldiers. It would have been a bloodbath. I'm convinced more than 1 million Japanese civilians would have died just in the ground fighting. Never mind the added air raids that would have killed more people. I was talking about earlier before we brought you into the actual stream, Jay, about how the firebombing at Tokyo killed about 500,000 people, which is about twice what the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki did. Yet nobody ever really talks about that because there's not an iconic mushroom cloud with it. It's just a firestorm, you know? Oh, it's a big plume. There's not really a picture. But if you look at this right here, I'll just go back. Oh, look at that. That's a mushroom cloud. That's a mushroom cloud. Oh, look at that. That's not even the mushroom cloud from Hiroshima, but like it's a nuke. Scary, right? Oh, a conventional air raid. Oh, that's not scary, bro. That's not evil or anything. Oh, they nuked them. How horrible. It's like, yeah, the nuke saved millions of Japanese lives. And of course, the American soldiers at the time were conscripts. You have to do everything in your power to minimize their loss as well, because they didn't sign up for that. Like you can't go around in total war looking after the enemy more than your own soldiers, especially when they're conscripts. So Truman, I know it's the hip thing to do to shit on Truman right now. Truman was he was nuke pilled, and I've said this before. It's one thing if you're just some average guy and you know you're casually into politics and stuff, but you get squeamish about these sorts of things, and it makes you uncomfortable to talk about nuclear warfare. Okay, that's fine. Don't involve yourself in these discussions. Don't get involved in politics around foreign policy, and don't run for office or try to become president, because in order to be a leader, especially a wartime leader, you have to swallow some pills. You can't be cringe and blue pilled like all these people who want to talk about how they were ready to surrender. No, they weren't. If they were ready to surrender, why did just months prior, why did Iwo Jima go the way that it did? Why were like civilians charging into US troops with knives and stuff in suicide attacks? Why were kamikaze airplanes crashing into US carriers when it was clear that Japan was going to lose the war? Likewise with Germany. Why did the Battle of Berlin have to happen? It was obvious. Everybody knew that the Soviets were going to win because those two countries, fascist Germany and Imperial Japan, it didn't matter that it was clear that you were going to lose, because you had rules, you had honor, you had the leader's prestige to uphold, and people would, you know, they didn't really have a choice, because if you were the one person who didn't kill yourself for the emperor, well then people would have killed you. So I mean, people are so detached from the reality of what World War II was like in that sense. Yeah. So they don't understand. Like, we're not talking about a country like the United States or like the United Kingdom. We're talking about fascist Japan in the 1940s. Like, Come on, man.
Yeah. Me and you, yeah. It's just insane. These people are completely insane. But you're 100% right with what you say, especially with how many people would be. Sorry, I'm still drinking my morning cup of tea here.
Oh yeah.
You are 100% right with about how many people were saved because we didn't do a land invasion and we didn't drop standard bombs from planes.
Yeah.
Because fire, like you said, the firestorm that killed more people than what the nuke did at the time, and we did that
Yep.
with one bomb. When we dropped the nukes, we only had to drop one bomb on each city compared to other bombing campaigns where we dropped fucking bomb loads of bombs on them.
Yeah, that is correct. So it reduced the chances of American casualties too, because if you're doing a big fire raid over a large city like Tokyo, you're setting up hundreds of bombers, and they are indiscriminately dropping, each one, dozens of bombs. So we're talking about thousands of bombs falling. They are incendiary. They're designed to set the paper and wood houses, because Tokyo was basically a city made of paper. And it was very easy to get a conflagration going. And about 500,000 people died in that firebombing. But you never really hear very many people talk about it. But I do want to preempt one of the talking points that the Brainlet Brigades would posit when we talk about how the alternative saw millions being killed in Japan and millions of Japanese people specifically dying. Because even if you didn't care about the Americans, because they're talking about this as like, oh, it's all about race or whatever, BS. But like, let's say, okay, you only care about Japanese lives. Obviously, more Japanese people would have died if Truman didn't drop the bomb. So what they would say is that, well, no, America, you don't understand, man. You're looking at it as a false dichotomy, bro. You don't understand. America should have just like not fought the war, bro. That's what they would say. Like, why do you have to do the invasion, bro? Why not just like get along, bro?
They're
the ones who fucking started the war. So,
can I ask you? Can you pull that tweet back up a second for me?
The Boston Review.
Yeah. I just want to. Yeah. So the belief that people of color are expendable, I fucking hate that so much. This is born out of the Iraq War. This sort of statement is mainly born out of the Iraq War, because they see people in Iraq as just being brown. Well, let me tell you something, boys and girls out there. There are white people in Iraq as well. Guess what?
What?
Yep. And there's Muslims that are white as well. I mean, I don't know if how many people have been abroad, but go to Israel or go to Jordan and tell me about all them white people that are Arabs and Jews and Muslims and so on that have been living there thousands of years. Anyway, the reason I bring this up, is you should be pointing the finger at the Japanese when it comes to this, because it was the Japanese that were going to China, not just China, but all over Southeast Asia, and just brutally killing the inhabitants of their respective countries, because the Japanese were like hardcore, well, even worse than the Nazis when it comes to their belief of them being the superior race and all of that.
Oh yeah, no, they thought of the Koreans as filth, to basically be, essentially used as sex slaves, and the men murdered essentially. And with the Japanese or with the Chinese, it was a similar degree of chauvinism and outright xenophobia. I mean, we're talking about, they're trying to make this out here that America waged war against Japan out of racism. No, Japan waged war against everybody out of racism.
Exactly.
It's the same thing with Saddam Hussein. It's classic projection. So they accused Dick Cheney and George W. Bush of doing a war for oil. Yet Saddam did 2 wars officially and like transparently,
as in admitted it to the world. I'm here for the oil.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Fields. He did.
He said he was going into Iran in 1980 specifically for oil and glory and land. And he said he was going into Kuwait in 91 for glory, oil, and to make it, the 17th province of Iraq or whatever. And Kuwait, even more so, was about oil. But if America defends her ally or defends oppressed people on the ground, brown bodies, man, they just want to blow up brown bodies. That's what they say to me and Reese all the fucking time. You just get off to the idea of dead brown kids. That's what they tell me all the time because I want to liberate people from tin pot despots.
Yeah.
And terrorizing tyrants.
That's what really pisses me off the most is with these people, like the far right. Yeah, when they start talking about being ISO cucks and all of that, I'm like, okay, fine, I can deal with the far right saying these things. Yeah, because the far right don't really like human rights, they don't like equality and blah blah blah. But when it's far left do it, it's what really annoys me because they go on talking about equality, talking about freedom, talking about justice, but then when it comes down to it, they'll happily let people live under the regime of brutal dictators and brutal tyrants because it's their people, man, it's their land. And it's like, no, I'm sorry, but I believe that us as Western nations, if we see oppression and brutality happening out there, we must do everything in our power to stop that and make sure that the individuals of those nations are free and safe from brutality. And that includes us using every single weapon at our ability, even the nukes, Kevin, even the fucking nukes.
But Jay, but Jay, you don't understand, man. You sound exactly like you've got white savior complex and a bad case of Orientalism, bro.
Oh dear, I'm so sorry that my view on the world of us all living as one and being equal to each other is white savior for you. Sorry that hurts you too much.
This is the meme. This is a meme right here. I made this meme about a year ago. I'll just remove the chyron so you can read it. This is the late Dr.
Yep, that's their culture.
Yeah, Edward Said. What does he say? Now, this is not an exact quote. This is me paraphrasing his entire career, but his entire career basically broke down to these two sentences. Quote, brown people deserve to live under brutal dictatorships or despots. That's their culture, bro. Liberating them would be Orientalism and imperialism, bro. That is his entire career. The dude opposed the war in Iraq. The dude carried water and licked the boots of the Hussein family. I mean, think about this. This guy thought that George W. Bush, actually, I can't remember if he died before the Iraq War or after, but he definitely opposed intervention in Iraq. In their heart of hearts, these people, honest to God, think that Saddam Hussein was better than George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, elected leaders that just happen to be like, what? Conservative in an American context, ignoring the fact that Saddam was 1,000 times more ultra conservative Baathist in a world context. Like George W. Bush looks like a weed smoking hippie compared to Saddam Hussein. So,
yeah.
No, I hate these people, man. Academia is filled with this kind of BS. It's just again, when Trump talks about this, he's actually right. He talks about how a lot of academia is centered around basically crapping on America and making America out to be exceptionally bad, and that's true. And those professors are by and large paid by the American taxpayer to then crap on America. I look at this.
Did you not get the memo? I mean, I even made a video about it. It's on Twitter where I'm like, America bad. America bad.
Yeah, America bad, man. It's America bad. America bad. All America wants to do is just like nuke people and stuff. By the way, one of the things that I talk about with the nuke bill is like one of the reasons why the nukes made them surrender, but the conventional firebombing of the Capitol didn't, is because look at this thing. They had no idea what it was. The psychological impact of a nuclear weapon, even if it kills fewer people and causes less damage, obviously matters. So people say to me, they're like, oh, they had ulterior motives for the nuke. It wasn't just about taking out whatever military depot or whatever. It's like, yeah, that's called a win-win. They took out the military depot at Hiroshima. And by the way, I just want to debunk that stupid meme that Hiroshima and Nagasaki were not military targets. What are you talking about? It was total war. They had a military depot at Hiroshima, which it was targeting. They didn't target the outskirts. And then at Nagasaki, they were targeting an industrial complex on the outskirts of the city. What do you think they were producing there? You think they were producing like iPhones? No. It was total war. They were producing war material. Exactly. Like I don't understand this idea that if it's like a tank on the battlefield, it's a military target. But if it's a factory producing tanks, it's not a military target. Like, just because you're not wearing a uniform doesn't mean that you're not part of the war effort in a total war. Like, it was fucking total war. Again, whenever I see the brainlet brigades try to rationalize it and say, oh, well, they were targeting civilians or whatever, it's like, civilians died. The targets themselves were specific military and industrial centers, which, let's keep it real, total war, industrial equals military. Again, when it comes down to it, you needed to create a psychological effect to get them to surrender, because you're dealing with a culture that was 100% more than anybody else. I mean, even more than the Germans. And the Germans fought to the last man at Berlin when they knew they were going to lose. They sent 12-year-olds to go out on suicide missions to fight the Soviets when they knew it was a lost cause. There's literally one of the final videos you ever see of Adolf Hitler is him standing there decorating young 12-year-old, 13-year-old boys that are about to go and fight the Red Army to save Hitler, when everybody knows, Hitler knows it's a lost cause. They know it's a lost cause. Everybody knows the gig's up. It's done. The communists are coming. And what do? Well, you must defend the Reich, the Fuhrer, right? Japanese culture was 10 times more suicidal than that. They were 10 times less likely to surrender. You needed to do something to make a sea change in their psyche. And again, this goes back to the nuke pill. What better way to do that than to actually drop a nuclear bomb? This was the only thing in the universe that would get them to actually come and say, you know what, Uncle, we're done, son. Like,
well, Kevin, let's not forget that the Japanese were so brutal, especially to minority groups and everything, and not just because of their whole their view of being the superior race and everything, but they were just so barbaric in warfare and the way that they conducted warfare. It was insane. They were so barbaric that even the Nazi ambassador to Japan was saving people, Chinese people.
Yeah.
You know,
they were too racist for the Nazis. The Nazis got triggered by Japanese racism.
Even the Nazis thought they were fucked up.
Oh, but America was the racist one. America just wanted to bomb like brown and yellow bodies, dude. That was what that was about. Dude, like Pearl Harbor. What was the whole thing about? The total war, all this stuff. Like these people, when they give you that BS line, oh well, World War II was a just war, but like Iraq is bad, man. That's a lie. They don't think that American involvement in World War II was just. And if they were alive back then, they would have opposed it. These people talk about, and it's the same with the libertarians. Oh, well, we support a right to self-defense. You have a right to self-defend if you're attacked. Well, America was literally attacked in World War II by the Japanese. Oh, but to actually fight them, that would be imperialism, bro. No, they're the imperialists. It's literally Imperial Japan. They have an emperor. By the way,
hang on. Whoa. Back then, so did we. Our king was the emperor of India and whatnot. So, I mean, like, we can't face shade for them being called an empire or an emperor.
Oh, man. Oh man, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, we're both in the Commonwealth and stuff. But like, but goddamn, the thing is with all this, it's like Imperial Japan was an absolute menace. I mean, they
Oh
were
yeah.
invading Burma. They were obviously China, Korea, Australia. Where we're talking about obviously Hawaii, the United States.
Yeah.
Um, just this idea, and you'll also see people say, "Oh, but bro, they didn't have to do the nukes because like Stalin was going to do an amphibious invasion, and that's why that they surrendered because they were scared of what the Red Navy. The Red Navy wasn't even a thing. Like the Soviet Navy in World War II was almost non-existent. How were
Yeah.
they going to land troops in mainland Japan? That was a meme. Like that's
Mhm.
fake news. The
Yeah.
Soviets had nowhere near the capacity to do like what they're going to do a Normandy style invasion of Honshu or Hokkaido. No, they're not. They're barely going to reach the Kuril Islands. Like what kind of fantasy land do these brainlet brigades live in, man? They know nothing. They know nothing about history.
Hmm.
So they know nothing, dude.
Hold the fort a sec, Kevin, because I need to go
Yeah.
for a break. 2 seconds.
Yeah, yeah. So Jay will be back momentarily. We got some people in the chat. Very cool. Very cool. See, this is the whole thing. Is it's like, yeah. Going back to the phrasing of the Al Jazeera tweet here, the U.S. has never apologized for the bombings. The United States should never apologize for the bombings. It was total war. Japan started the war. Imagine how many people would have died if the atomic bombings hadn't been done and America did more air raids and a conventional invasion. Millions of people would have died. Millions more, right? I can't get over the magnitude of the anti-Americanism and the anti-Westernism that's prevalent in our own society. I mean, it is unbelievable how far we've fallen since the 1940s and 50s, where it used to be unthinkable that that you would that you would write something like this about your own side. I mean, this is the most projecting phraseology here because everything that they wrote here is essentially what Japan did, except instead of murdering 100,000 people, they would just do that in one city in Japan, and
Yep.
they would do it for fun. They would literally make competitions of like, how many Chinese people can you stab tonight, this kind of thing. That's what they would do. You should look up what they did in Nanking. We can't even talk about it on the program because it's like YouTube. I mean, but you can look it up. Oh, but did they really deserve to get nuked? Yeah, yeah. You don't want to get nuked. Don't attack America. That's not complicated. So we'll see if Jay's back or.
I'm here.
Um,
I'm here.
oh,
Can you hear me?
Jay's back.
Yes. You can hear me. Yeah.
So Reese took the nuke pill. Obviously, I've been nuke pilled for a long time. It's stuff like this where it's like I'm gonna have that debate with Dylan Burns at some point. Their whole argument of like, oh, he supports using nukes. It's like, yeah, I'm really over the idea that like nukes are the worst evil in the world or whatever. It's like in World War II, about 200,000 people died from nuclear weapons, 230,000 or so died from nuclear weapons, including the radiation. That's basically a weekend of fun for the Japanese army in China at any point in the 10 years prior to that. It's like the nukes are what you focus on, or what these people focus on, the nukes. I mean, it is unfathomable how much self-hatred there is in our society. This idea of like, Western guilt, Western hatred, etc., from Westerners. It's like, oh, we need to bow down and prostrate ourselves at the altar of what? Of wokery? By the way, like Japan is a Western society now. Like Japan is better off because of the intervention. Like
Oh,
people
fuck.
also say, "Oh, but intervention never works." Oh yeah, then why is Japan rich, well off, successful, and free now, whereas they were
And
enslaved back in
yeah,
the
and
day?
Germany. And
And Germany
Germany.
and Korea. I mean, I
Yeah.
I have a question. They always say, "Oh, when has intervention ever worked?" I have a question. When has an American intervention never improved the situation? I'm not saying made it perfect, but when has an American intervention actually made things worse? Because I can't think of one right now. You might be able to say, "Oh, well, the Bay of Pigs failed and stuff." It's like, yeah, that I guess the Bay of Pigs
Yeah.
might be one,
Yeah.
but
Cuba's the only place I could think of. Because like, say for example, like in South America where America fucked up quite often. But look at it since then, it's got better, you
oh
know.
yeah,
So but with Cuba's probably the only place I can think of is where it hasn't got better, no matter what we've done.
yeah.
But that isn't really a failure at our military strength or our military tactics or anything like that. That's more of a failure of our political leaders.
Yeah.
The Bay of Pigs failed not because poor leadership by command or unequipped troops or whatever. It failed because Kennedy, I want to say,
Yeah, it was
basically cut,
Kennedy.
cut half of the fucking deployment and cut half of the and stop the Air Force being involved in it all. I reckon if they'd stuck to the initial plan, Cuba would have been liberated that day.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point there. Is that again, this is something that I talk about in this program all the time, is that it's not always about how strong your military is. Sometimes history is decided simply by political will. Because
Mm.
like you can have all the military hard power in the world, and if you're a feckless little pigeon and you
Yep.
like taking photo ops and selfies with communist dictators, you're never going to get anywhere. They're going to get the upper hand. It's the reason why Russia's gained so much ground, even though America is orders
Hmm.
of magnitude stronger, because America has no will to fight. And it's not even about fighting. Like when you're that strong, all that you need to do is simply say, no, red line, and that's it, bro. But obviously, Russia called America's red line bluff in Syria, and Obama was like, what am I going to do? He called my bluff. Unbelievably pathetic, man. Imagine being the president of the strongest superpower in history and getting cucked by a KGB communist thug.
Uh-huh.
Unbelievable.
Someone in the chat says Vietnam, but that was because LBJ didn't want a repeat of Korea. But Vietnam is still a success. Yes, the North took over, the North won. However, the Vietnam government came running back to America and is America's number one friend now, you know? So it did work
Yeah.
out in the long run.
Well, Vietnamese people actually have one of the highest favorable ratings of capitalism in the world and America in the world, even though they're a communist system and everything. And I think it would actually make sense to work with them against communist China the same way it made sense to work with China against the Soviets. So,
Yeah, exactly.
you know,
Exactly. Yeah. I would agree 100% with that. We need to take what we were doing with China pre-1990, pre the fall of the Soviet Union, and apply that to places like Vietnam today.
wait.
'Cause
We got Uriel Suarez in the chat saying Kuwait. Wait, America intervened to save Kuwait. Kuwait would be
America
part of
did, yeah, Kuwait was
Saddam.
saved.
I don't understand. Like, are you using that as an example of success? Because we're basically saying, we were just trying to get an example of failure. Because Kuwait's an obvious success. Saddam was repelled and the country was liberated very quickly.
Mhm.
Even
Mhm.
like, and don't get me wrong, I characterized that war and George H.W. Bush's realist moral relativism, spheres of influence bullshit, fear of the Soviets, etc. All that kind of stuff is just cringy. But even, notwithstanding the fact that he didn't go in and take out Saddam then and there, it was still a success with respect to Kuwait. The mission was still accomplished with respect to Kuwait.
Yep.
So that was one of the prime examples of where American intervention made the world more peaceful and secure. So, and the country on the ground free. I mean, look at Kuwait today. Compare it to what it would have been under Saddam, a shithole tyranny
Yep.
dystopia. Now they're rich and balling. So, and they're a U.S. ally. So,
Exactly.
So it was obviously, and boss, you have to uphold the principle. Like if American defense doesn't mean anything here, then it doesn't mean anything anywhere. That's why I worry so much about North Korea taking over the South, because once North Korea blackmails the the United States to stay out of that, NATO won't mean anything anymore. If you can just say, "Oh, I've got nukes, bro, so stay out of it."
Yeah.
That's what I worry about. Like that's why I support a first nuclear strike against North Korea. That's what I will be debating Dylan Burns on. And I know that their number one argument, my dude, their number one argument, like the only arrow in their quiver that they have is, oh, he supports nukes. That's insane, bro. It's like, yeah, except they already have nukes. Let's have an adult conversation here about what to do about it now before they get H bombs. So, and that's coming. That's coming. Spoiler alert, they're going to get that pretty soon unless action is taken within the next few years to destroy the regime. And that's going to require nuclear weapons. So, because they already have nukes. So, you know.
Yep.
So, I'm nuke pilled. I literally have it in my Twitter bio of nuke pilled. I'm done with everybody being a child about this kind of stuff. Like, we did not choose this world, but what are we supposed to do? Pretend it doesn't exist until it knocks on our door like the Emperor did in December 7th, 1945, and kills 5,000 Americans at Pearl Harbor. See, that's what isolationism gets you. Is, now they were more focused on Germany at the time, but I'm saying for the record, even if you mind your own business, don't be surprised if other regimes bomb you. I mean, that was such a good example of how America didn't do anything wrong and America got bombed. 9/11 is another good example. What are they supposed to do? Pretend that the world doesn't exist? Like, oh, that the libertarian approach to foreign policy is gonna what? Guarantee safety? There's this idea out here that the terrorists only hate America because America's in the Middle East. Like, I got news, dudes. Al Qaeda was started to get rid of the US and Saudi Arabia, yes, but why do they hate the United States in the first place? It has more to do than it just being the US. It's about the values and everything. So, so that's my little rant there. But I want to see what Uriel had to say about Kuwait. He says, I thought we were talking about economy and quality of life. Wait, but Kuwait's rich now and their quality of life is really high.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I'm missing something. Like, Kuwait is one of the best countries in the world that you could be born into. Like, outside of the West, I guess. Like, outside of Western countries, it's like, what is it? Like Kuwait, Singapore. Like, these are kind of authoritarian systems that have done pretty well for themselves, and their Western allies for the most part. Like, obviously, Singapore is pretty authoritarian. I know some people might kind of consider it Western.
I mean, people always go, oh, but what about Saudi Arabia?
Oh, what about Saudi, though?
What about Saudi? It's like, yeah, we know about Saudi, but Saudi are, our ally and also are improving. Yes, they are going slowly, and I would like it to happen faster. However, they are doing it. They're going in the right direction. And maybe when the new king takes over, it might happen a little bit faster. We'll see.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. And after Iran is dealt with, then you have a lot of leverage to pressure Saudi Arabia, because then they know that they're next otherwise. Whereas what do those people who always say, what about Saudi? What do they want to do? They oppose getting Iran over with. They don't want to go to war with Iran. They want to just let Iran build up nukes, and then they start the war on their terms. Because again, there's no choice between war and peace. There's only a choice between war now, where X amount of people die, or war later, where your enemy gets nukes and then 50x people die. Like, yeah. I'm so done with this idea. Like, it was the same thing in the debate where people were asking in the chat when I was rewatching it. They're like, "Hey, Liz, honest question. Do you really think that Kevin is pro nuking people and you're anti-nuking people, because that's the way that they phrase it. Is just because I'm an adult about it, and I recognize that you have to take some tough actions against states that have nukes or are about to get nukes. Oh, what? I must love the idea of a nuclear war. Like, I'm trying to minimize casualties here.
Exactly.
Like, I just explained to the brainlets, if they ever watch this, how nuking Hiroshima and Nagasaki saved millions of lives. Like that, but that's a red pill right there. They can't handle that. That's a nuke pill. They can't handle it. So, can't handle it.
It's they're idiots. They're all fucking idiots, mate. This is the
Well, that's why I call them the brainlet brigades, because they swarm. They do their little ratio thing where they try to make you feel bad. Like, oh, you're a bad person, bro. It's like, I don't care. Like, that you think that I'm bad. It's the same thing with like George Bush. Like, he really didn't care what people thought about the Iraq war and stuff. He's like I have one life. I get 8 years in office. I'm not going to live worrying over the opinion of pigeons, bro. I'm going to ride off in the sunset when I'm done, knowing I made the world a better place. And what did they do? Him, Rumsfeld, Cheney, Bremer, all those guys, and of course the neocons behind them. What did they do? They liberated about 50 million people between 2001 and when they left office. 50 million people. Not too bad. Not too bad. How many people did Obama liberate? Not too many. You could say Libya-ish, but look at how badly he botched that. I mean, people talk about the Iraq war as being botched. No, the Iraq war was botched because Obama pulled out. But in Libya, oh man, at least with Iraq, it was a different administration. How embarrassing, how deflating is it when the administration that starts the liberation campaign is the one to pull out? Like, no excuses at that point. He had no commitment whatsoever. Oh man, when I look at that, I'm like, I'm not saying that it would have been better if you left Gaddafi in power. I definitely disagree with that, but that is close to an example of where American intervention might have been a net negative. It's close. It's still net positive in my view, but god damn, it could have been so much better if they just stayed the course, man. Like, unbelievable. Because there's a literal civil war in the country now.
Yeah.
And we've got Russian-backed Haftar, who's like, commanding like what? Last I checked, it was like almost half the country. So, and now we're forced to pick between Turkey and Russia. They could have been a democracy. They could have been a U.S. ally. So tragic, man. But then, of course, we got brainlets who think that Obama was like this warmonger neocon. Like, imagine being so far on the other side of the spectrum that you think that like Obama was a neocon.
Yep.
It's like there are people who think that Tulsi, like Anna Kasparian of Young Turks, thinks that Tulsi Gabbard is a neocon imperialist. Tulsi Gabbard, like the brainlet that you and me and Reese dunk on, or at least we used to back when she was relevant, right? Like,
yeah.
By the way, people say 2020 horrible year and everything. It's been really bad, but one saving grace to 2020 is that Tulsi lost. So, there is that. We got Biden.
I mean, hang on, Kevin. No, I don't see that as a positive thing. That is the correct thing to have happened. Any other result would have been a problem. Correct.
No, I get
the correct
that.
Outcome came out. It isn't. Yeah, for me, it isn't. I don't see it as a win.
No, I know it's a low bar.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, you're 100% right. I mean, look at everything since Bush and fucking Tony Blair have left office. All our Western interventions have been a shit show. And again, it's not because our troops are not equipped properly. It's not because they don't have the right equipment or they're not trained properly or whatever. The problem comes down to the political will to act. The political will to act in Libya was, we'll do flyovers and drop a few bombs and hopefully the civil war will kick it into gear. We should have done that. But then when they fucking grabbed Gaddafi, we should have deployed troops as peacekeepers to keep the peace, basically. And when it comes to Syria, I'm sorry, but the Syria should have been a fucking full-on land invasion, send the whole lot in day one, like straight up.
Well, with
the
Syria,
thing is, with Syria, and the thing is Israel has done more to deal with Syria than any other ally. It's sat there going, we're waiting, guys. We're ready to roll in across the Golan Heights as soon as you guys land in. It's Aleppo, the port city of Syria, isn't it?
Tartus,
yeah. As soon as America and everyone else lands there, boom, fucking Israelis straight across the Golan Heights, they're coming in. It would have been perfect. But there was no political will to make it happen whatsoever, which is a fucking disgrace, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've had people actually say that I sound like a fascist when I talk about political will because, like, Hitler, Riefenstahl, they had the whole, triumph of the will thing and all this. It's like, it should not be fascist to be strong. There used to be the idea of the arsenal of democracy. Like, I don't like FDR that much, but it's a good line. That used to just be a thing that all countries had, was willpower.
Yeah.
But now the West is so weak that just simply the idea of saying, oh, our enemies all have, strong political will despite being weak. Imagine if the democracies also had willpower. Fascist. Like, I had people that messaged me today and stuff like, okay, fascist, over my comments about Hiroshima, for example, about being justified, that kind of stuff. It's like, except it was literally against the fascist regime, but whatever, bro. It's like, oh man, dude. Like, again, I call them the brainlet brigades, right? So
these fucking people, man, they are just so stupid. It's unreal.
These people all have degrees too. That's also what's so stupid about it, is like a lot of them have like history degrees or political science degrees or sociology degrees. Some of them even like science degrees and stuff. And I mean, they basically, it's just a Michael Moore documentary, except it's a certificate on a piece of paper. Like, they watched Michael Moore. He said Bush did 9/11 for oil. Political science degree, bro. It's like brown bodies. Political science degree. Orientalism, white savior complex. By the way, white savior complex. Why should race matter at all in this? Like, these people want to make everything about race. It's like, how about like Kurds are people, Americans are people, Westerners are people, North Koreans are people, South Koreans are people. How about like human rights actually mean something? I like what you said, because I've talked about that before, how it's actually, it makes sense in a way that if you're a literal fascist, there's nothing hypocritical about being anti-war, because you just don't care about anybody else in the world. But if you are one of those types who talks about solidarity and shit like that, it's like, not really. Like, Anna Kasparian on Young Turks and Ida Rodriguez on Young Turks the other day were talking about how, they're big on women's rights, not just in America, but particularly in the Middle East. I'm like, they opposed the war in Afghanistan. Never mind the war in Iraq. The fuck are they talking about? Like, if they had it their way, the Middle East would be an Islamofascist theocracy, and women would be murdered for accidentally showing a glimpse of their ankle in public.
Yeah.
So done with these people, dude. I fucking hate the isolationists. And of course, the isolationists are the ones that give us all the wars. They're the ones that made World War II so deadly. Imagine if World War II happened in 36 instead. Imagine if they just said, oh, no, you know what? You can't have the Sudetenland, bro. Hitler would have been fucked. And the war would have been over. Like, buying a few years of peace at the expense of tens of millions more dying in the war is the most counterproductive bullshit around. And of course, when Obama had his doctrine of strategic patience with North Korea, strategic patience, I translate that as quote unquote strategic procrastination. That's all that they want to do. They just want to procrastinate. They obviously are aware that there are threats in the world. They just don't want to do anything about it. They want to hope that they'll go away. By what mechanism would North Korea go away? Oh, well, maybe there'll be a revolution, bro. Yeah, fat chance of that happening when there was the slight rumors of a few generals doing a coup. They were rounded up and set on fire in the Regrado Mayday Stadium before 150,000 people and Kim Jong-il, to make an example. There's never going to be an organic uprising in North Korea. That's not how it works. The state has all the technology. The people live in the Middle Ages. Like, how are peasants that can barely get enough calories to survive using oxen and wooden plows from the 1500s? How are they going to do a revolution? It's like what CGP Gray says in his video. The rules for rulers are that they're very.
You've watched it. Oh my God, I love you, Kevin.
Many times. I'm a big fan of that video.
Same,
and,
mate. Do you know, right? I've used that video about 4 times as like a starting point to explain to people who are like pro-revolution, and I've shown them that video, and at the end they've all gone, "Yeah, okay, I'm no longer pro-revolution now." I'm like, exactly, because you will end up getting purged. At the end.
you know who needs to watch that? Our fat comrade. Friend, comrade man bun neckbeard Vosh, he needs to watch that video because it's not clicking for him. He's had literal tankies kick his ass in debates. I don't like Caleb Maupin, but Caleb Maupin kicked his ass in debates because he's like, well, what do you think socialism is? Because he's arguing that communist China is a socialist paradise and stuff, and it's like I mean, I can see an argument to say, oh, well, maybe they're not 100% true socialism or whatever. But the point that Caleb Maupin was making is like, you just want to have your own fantasy system divorced from history and reality and everything. And I'm like, I'm finding myself agreeing with the tanky here. How embarrassing is that this guy, this anarcho-libertarian socialist, whatever, wow, man, they would get purged so fast. And I've said it before. It's like, the rules for rulers. Okay, what I like about that video, and I've seen quite a few of Gray's videos, is that and I've said this about Kraut. I've said this about our friend in the Hot Gang, Timothy Spin. I love the attention to detail because I get a kick out of, especially when I rewatch these because they're gold. I get a kick out of like the split-second wink that the king does at the end there, that kind of shit. I get a kick out of that because he's like, oh yeah, but you'll be different, wink. It's like, and people are like, oh, spooky, ominous or whatever. I'm like, yeah, kind of, but that's how it's always gone. That should almost be common sense. But I do like how he noted something near the end too, which was pretty good, which was the 0th rule to it all. And that's something that these people like Vosh and everybody really miss out on, which is that if you have no power, you can affect nothing. They just assume, oh yeah, but I'll get power. It's like, how? You have to win the power struggle. Who wins the power struggle? The most brutal comrade. Because there's only one way that you win the power struggle. Like, I'm not saying that it's impossible for Vosh. He could win the power struggle if a revolution happened. He would just simply have to say, okay, I'm going to have to kill these comrades and make up a list and have them disappear tonight because they're getting in the way of us having our perfect utopia. Like, it's because that's basically what Stalin did. Like, I'm so over this idea that like Stalin was like this evil, malicious person and stuff. It's like he thought that he was defending the revolution. Yeah. So he meant, well, if you're a communist, like Marx would be proud. Marx wanted a dictatorship of the proletariat. What do you think Stalinism is? Like, he literally starved the peasants so that the proletariat could have more factories. Like, killed 10 million Ukrainians so that Russian proletarian workers could like have like steel mills and stuff and whatnot. It's like, that's the thing. And so, CGP Gray, I know CGP Gray, yes. Everybody should go and subscribe to him. He's based. The fact that Young Turks have as many subs as him is disgusting. Gray should have like 10 times what they've got. Young Turks, by the way, Young Turks at 5 million, almost 5 million subs. Like, imagine unironically watching them in 2020 for news and commentary and stuff. A lot of people do. Hassan Piker literally thinks, Hassan Piker would have been rooting for Japan at Pearl Harbor. Let's just keep it real. Like, he supported, he thinks that Al Qaeda were the good guys on 9/11. He literally admitted it in public. These people, man, these people, and then of course he'll retweet me to make fun of me, or he'll retweet Wyatt to make fun of his facial appearance or his fashion sense. Meanwhile, this guy who claims to be like this Marxist is dressing in like the most overpriced, vapid, materialist like swag, like Gucci swag and stuff, which looks
Oh yeah.
gaudy.
Do,
And
do, do me and Kevin, this is to everyone watching, but do me and Kevin look like people that can afford the lifestyle that these fucking. This is why the far right is right when they say that these are. I can't say it. What's that fucking alcoholic?
champagne socialists.
Yes, thank you. My brain just did not want to say champagne.
I was talking about the champagne socialist last night. I was talking about Vosh, and like I wouldn't say that I'm far right. I would say I'm like kind of right of center. But
no, I'm saying this is where the far right is right when they call people like that champagne socialists, because they are. They go around. They're living these lives where they've got all these living the high life, the elite life, because they're wealthy as fuck, looking down at people who are poorer than them, and then blaming other rich people that these poor people exist. And what do they actually do about it? Oh, that's right. They just moan about it. But they don't actually like go out and solve things. Like, for example, I'll give you an example. Yeah, right. In England, there's a football player who plays for Manchester United. Yeah. And during the lockdown, instead of being like a typical football player who earns thousands, hundreds of thousands per year playing football, he was like, I'm not going to sit on TV and moan about the poor people and that they're starving or whatever. He went out there and used his own money, also did fundraising, and throughout the whole of the pandemic was trying to make sure that no child in Britain would be going hungry whatsoever. You know, that's what someone who actually care does. You know, they actually get off their ass and do things. They don't just sit at home moaning in front of their computer and wearing Gucci and whatnot.
Yeah, but Vosh, yeah, but you're ignoring his contributions to the working people. He played Fortnite and called people chuds on Twitter for being to the right of Joseph Stalin.
Yeah, good point. You got us there. You got us.
Like, I mean, I've seen some of their comments too. Like, occasionally, sometimes people will bring up to these people, you know, well, how do you grapple with Hitchens, for example? And they'll always dismiss Hitchens as like this far right neocon. I find it funny, man, because like Hitchens was in many ways like a traditional Marxist from an economic analysis point, but he got mugged by reality after they took his passport away in Cuba, and he had to, you know, basically work the crops for a few weeks before he was able to get out, and he realized that the revolution isn't all it's cracked up to be. These guys, these Hassan losers, have never left a Western country. They have no idea what the systems they defend for are like. Hitchens had the balls to go over and walk the walk, and he turned out kind of not exactly something you want to advocate for. So these guys, man, these guys, what Hassan Piker's got like 150,000 subs, 300K followers on Twitter, and so what does he do? He all that he does now is he'll just retweet people like me or Wyatt with no comments or anything, because he knows that his mob of Bernie bros and the Brainlet brigades will just basically immerse us with insults and basically saying like, you never get laid or whatever, all this shit. And it's like these dudes are unironically simping Hassan Piker. Like, how sad and pathetic do you have to be where you're literally like you're taking Hassan Piker basically as your daddy. Unbelievable. The dude, I said it before, the dude thinks that on 9/11 Al-Qaeda was the good guys. He's not on our side. They're not on our side. So, you know.
Yeah, not at all. These people need to be. Me and Kevin have a different of opinion on this. Me, I like to just say that calling them out and calling them out for their stupidity is enough. But Kevin's like, no, we should throw them under the Sedition Act and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a bit of a meme. It's a bit of a meme, but hey man, you don't get to do that because you're unironically like full on with the monarchy. So a lot of people could say, hey man, glass house, because a lot of people, especially in our circle, they don't really think too highly of the monarchy. Like some people see the Queen of England as in many ways almost like a dictator. So, there is that.
Constitutional monarchy, Kevin. She gives up her power.
Yeah. Well, I was saying earlier,
And plus, like I've said this before, like, for me, the only reason I'm pro monarchy and I'm pro that is because it's where I come from. It's our government of system. If we are going to replace the system we have, for example, for me, if Kevin turned around and said, "Oh, Jay, the United States is going to form a one world government and Britain's got to be part of it," I'd be like, "Sweet, let's do it. We're getting rid of the monarchy today and we're signing the dotted line and joining up." I'm all for it. But just to get rid of the monarchy to turn Britain into some sort of republic, I think is just kind of a waste of time, a waste of money, and a waste of effort at this stage. I'm only interested in changing our formula of government if it's for something greater and better than our current political system. That's why if Britain was to integrate more into the European Union and the United States of Europe was to be formed, I'd be like, okay, time to get rid of the monarch.
Yeah. Yeah. I think most of it is just like memes and stuff. Like I think the thing with the sedition thing is it's like, yeah, it's kind of a meme. I'm not sure that I would actually do it. I
Yeah,
just
I know.
for people who don't necessarily know me or might find some of my hot takes on Twitter to be a little bit on the far end of the spectrum. What I'm interested in doing is getting a conversation and moving the Overton window because we're so far on the other side that it's like it's the same thing with the nuke pill. It's like even if you don't do the nuclear war, can we at least get it to a point where military action of some sort is even on the table? Because I'm so sick of this idea that like, oh, you can't talk about military action at all. So I'm like, okay, nuke them. Like somebody needs to move the Overton window back to a point of normalcy because right now, but Iran's the good guys, bro. Iran's the good guys. I always go back to when Trump killed Soleimani. 6% of Democrats thought it was the right thing to do. 94% thought, "Oh man, he's official, bro." I can't get over that, man. That's Trump's derangement syndrome there. But the correct answer is 100% of both parties should have backed Trump on that. It's not a partisan thing. It's like Obama killing bin Laden. It's like you shouldn't have to be a Democrat to support that.
Exactly.
Oh man, we should probably wrap this up, but I'll give you the floor.
Nicosia anyway.
Yeah.
Shortly. Going to the capital. I am today.
Oh man, yeah. But I will give you the floor to give any sort of closing remarks. I mean, we were talking about, of course, the 75th anniversary of the atomic bombing on Hiroshima. But if there's anything else you want to talk about, definitely feel free. So.
No, I think we've pretty much covered it all. I mean, these brainlets need to realize that the nuking of Japan saved more lives than it took by tenfold.
Yeah. At a minimum.
Yeah.
At a minimum. Yeah.
At a minimum. Yeah. But these people. But thank you as always for having me on, Kevin. I really appreciate it. And if anyone is watching from my channel or where I share this, don't forget to subscribe to Kevin. He is the based Warhawk, and we need more people like Kevin.
Yo, thanks, Jay. Everybody go subscribe to Jay, by the way. He's right around 4,000 subs, so that's base. So we got to...
Oh, we're kicking it down, though, Kevin, because I'm kicking the hornet's nest that is the alt-right, so... We got to drop those numbers. It's going to be good.
Oh, man. Yeah. Oh, man. Okay. Well, I'll close this out by basically saying that the nuclear attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were justified.
100%.
If you've got an issue with it, you should take issue with the fact that Imperial Japan surprise attack and bombed Pearl Harbor. You should look into that. That was the tragedy that started that. It was not America's choice. America didn't ask for that. America didn't start the war. America ended the war.
Exactly.
And the nukes ended the war swiftly in as humane a way as possible. And yeah, did some people die a horrible death as a result of it? Yes. Did some people die in the firestorm that was caused by it? Yes. Would far more people have died in a conventional firestorm? Absolutely. And at least at Hiroshima, some people that died went out without even seeing the light because they were vaporized before their brain could register the light impulse. So that is a humane death. It might make you uncomfortable to think about getting vaporized, but I would rather be vaporized in a nuclear attack than die in a conventional firestorm where you're burned to death, like what happened at Tokyo. But Tokyo was also justified because it was total war. And to all the brainlets and all the anti-American filth shits out there that want to take an issue and want to woke scold the legacy of Harry Truman, I would simply encourage you to step outside of the bubble of the current time that you live in the most privileged nations in the world. And I want you to consider the context of what total war in the 1940s actually entailed. And imagine that you were an American serviceman, conscript. It would have been the best day of your life when Truman dropped those bombs, those nukes on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, August 6th, August 9th, 1945, because now you're not facing absolute death for something that you didn't start. Your lives were essentially spared, not to mention millions of lives on mainland Japan. And so those are my remarks there. America has absolutely nothing to apologize for. And the historical record will show that the world owes America a bit of thanks for not causing an absolute massacre with conventional force by invading Japan, where millions would have died. So again, it was a humane act of war. The irony of all of this is that, arguably speaking, the of everything that happened in World War II, of all the atrocities and everything, the nuclear attacks were two of the most humane of the acts of war that happened in that entire conflict. And of course, Japan started that conflict, invading Manchuria. Obviously, Hitler started it in Europe. The Axis started it. The Allies ended it. Simple as that. So be sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so yet. You can check me out at Patreon, and you can also send me a tip at PayPal. The link is in the description below. And be sure to follow me on Twitch. We got to get up to 50 followers. We're getting closer there each day. And definitely go and follow Jay over on YouTube at The War Kettle. So thank you for being here tonight, everybody. And, take care. Stay based. Peace, Warhawks.
Bye-bye, everyone.